It never stops, you know, a subculture. It just always just keeps happening, it keeps revolving. It happens a lot sooner and a lot quicker, I think, these days. And the thing about youth is, what's quite interesting about it in the last sort of 20 years, is that we've become older sooner and we stay younger a lot longer. So youth has just expanded. It's huge now. The name Kick Over the Statues comes from a dreadful record, actually, from the 80s by a band called the Redskins that were quite a sort of political band. It echoes a sentiment and an idea of the young eating the old and the idea of kind of burning it down and just starting again. So within the gallery space, Fabrica, the idea is to bring the external inside. So it's the idea of the street, and it could be any city if you like, and it just references any city in Britain right now. Where you see the pictures hung, I guess the idea is that they're like advertising, kind of hoarding, and we used the format of traditional advertising print, so a 48 sheet, 34 sheet, these different sort of tapestries of print in terms of like outdoor marketing, and applied that, scaled down slightly just to fit the gallery space. I've been taking photographs for about 20 years now. My main subject, if you like, for a very long time has been the idea of youth and the kind of invention of youth and what that means. I started making pictures on the Northern Soul scene in the 90s when I was at university here in Brighton at the art school. I went from the soul scene, the Northern Soul scene, to photographing the garage scene in the late 90s. That was something that was just blowing up at that time. But there's a similarity there, there's a common kind of thread, which I think exists in most of the subject that I've sort of photographed really, which is that sort of like grace under pressure. It's the idea of looking good for the weekend, if you like, and sort of dancing and music and love and chaos, and, you know, that kind of idea of a movement and a subculture. Because when as soon as it's sort of observed, if you like, it's over. In Britain, I think the idea of subculture and the idea of style within subculture seems to become something of a misnomer of late. Probably because the people that view and discuss style and subculture are usually older, and their reflection of it, their idea of it, is usually stuck in a slightly different place. When we were younger, we moved in tribes, you know, you were a mod or a skinhead or a casual, etc., and you may eventually become one or the other and try different things out, but people were fairly aligned. So when someone my age, from my kind of peer group, will say to me, oh, subcultures don't exist anymore in the way they did when we were growing up. I mean, for me, that's ideal, that's perfect, because they shouldn't know. And it's the next generation's time to sort of invent really and create. And that's where the sort of premise for the projects really come. I'm just looking at what young people are doing in terms of their image right now and seeing how they're putting it together. And that's the joy of it really, how they're putting it together. So for photographing this project, I chose as a location the route of Notting Hill Carnival. It was somewhere that I thought had a great history in terms of music and youth culture and style. You had the kind of mod scene in the early 60s in that area. You had sort of the Jamaican immigration in that area, so you began to hear sort of, I guess, ska and island music at that time. And then you had that kind of reggae movement throughout the 70s that gave way to punk in the sort of mid-70s. So you had like the Clash and Generation X, people like that in that area. I think it's always just been a kind of an area that's been a sort of catalyst for the sort of expression of youth really. in this country. Sometimes you're photographing people and it's like there's a mutual sort of understanding, and it's like you're doing a little dance together. Yeah. And it's quite a nice little moment. You're kind of capturing them, and you know, they want to be seen. You know, they look good and they want to be seen in a certain way. So to be given that kind of privilege to photograph them is really nice. So there's a nice kind of exchange going on. It's good. And sometimes you're in the street and it's carnival and it's mayhem. But I think you get that energy in the pictures for sure. And then there's other moments where they just go very, very sort of quiet and let you kind of work around them. So I think you can see all of those different sort of feelings really in their moments. What I was looking for really was just the authenticity really. An individual that has like a real understanding of the kind of history, if you like. And I think that's kind of key to this. And that's why people of my generation, if you like, would think that subculture and style doesn't really exist. And it doesn't in the same way, because the references are so much more readily available right now, and they have been for a good 10 years. You can do a lot of research very, very quickly now and find out about a look and where it came from and what stemmed off from that look and what it instigated and what happened because of it. And the people I was looking for had an understanding of that, even though they were very young. It's almost like they'd kind of grown up understanding that and kind of reinventing it. So it's always the reappropriation. That's always been the point really, the reappropriation of style, if you like. I think the defining factor of photographing youth, if you like, is that we've all been there. So there's a commonality to it. There's a kind of conversation of being young and kind of defining yourself and finding your style and playing with that. And to whatever degree, most people will have experienced that in some way. That maybe is one of the successes of photographing youth culture, I think. We've all been there.